By the Mishnah on Daf Chavav Amud Beis, the second Mishnah towards the bottom of the Yomad. The Mishnah continues Menegeya to how many Kainim were needed for the various different Karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash. Dr. Mishnah Ayel Karav Ba'achadasa. A ram that's brought as a carbon needs 11 Kainim to bring the carbon onto the Mizbeach. So the Mishnah explains Habasar B'chamisha. The different parts of the basar that's brought in the Mizbeach, there are 5 kainim. That's the same as we learned before regarding a lamb that's brought by a carbon oila. Hakravayim, and then the insides of the animal is, and v'asailes, and the flour that's brought for this carbon, v'ayayin, and the wine, b'shnayim. Each one of these have 2 kainim bringing them. Okay, so together that's 11. So the point is, because the sailes and the yayin are double, for a ram, it's double than what it is for a lamb. So therefore, it needs 2 kainim. The krevayim apparently, doesn't explain here, but the Mefarshim say that apparently it's also heavier. The insides of a ram are heavier than the insides of a lamb, so therefore it has to have 2 kainim. Par, an ox or a cow, is karav be'esrim v'arba. You need 24 kainim. It's a much bigger animal, much heavier. You need 24 kainim to bring it onto the Mizbeach. And the Mishnah goes through it. Haroish v'haregel. So you start with the head and the right foot, the back foot. Haroish be'echad. The roish needs 1 kain to carry it alone. V'haregel b'shnayim. And the foot, the back foot, needs 2 kainim to carry it. Then ha'ukitz v'haregel. The tail with the left back foot. So ha'ukitz b'shnayim. The tail has 2 kainim carrying it. V'haregel b'shnayim. And the foot also has 2 kainim carrying it. Ha'chazeh v'hageira, and then you have the chazeh, which is the chest or the breast, v'hageira, and the neck. So again, ha'chazeh be'echad, the breast has 1 kain, v'hageira b'shloisha, and the neck has, that area has 3 kainim carrying it. Shtei yadayim, the 2 front legs, b'shnayim, another 2 kainim. Shtei defanos, the 2 sides, the 2 parts of the sides of the animal, b'shnayim, again another 2 kainim. Hakravayim, the insides of the animal, v'asailes, the flour, v'ayayin, the wine, b'shloisha. Each one of these has 3 kainim carrying it. So together, this is 24 kainim bringing up the parts of the carbon that's from a par. When is this true? When we're talking about all these different numbers of how many kainim we're using here, but karbanis tzibur. When we're talking about karbanis tzibur, so whether it's a carbon tamid or carbon musif, so this is the number of how much there were. Aval bekarban yachid, but when it comes to carbon yachid, the miratza lahakriv makriv. If one kain wants to come and he's going to do all the avodas, everything. And Rashi here actually says, not only this kain is going to do everything on his own. The last Rashi in the bottom of the page, he says, "Ubeloi payis." Any carbon yachid, there is no lottery that's made for this. Any kain can do it on his own. That's Rashi's opinion. Other Mefarshim, however, disagree with this. Other Rishonim, because in the Mishnah it just says, "Ratza lahakriv makriv." You could be makriv alone, but you still would need a payis for this. Because what the whole point of the payis was, as we learned in the beginning of the Perek, we're afraid they're going to come to argue and fight. So if in every carbon yachid there were many karbanis yachid that were brought on a day in the Beis HaMikdash, if we're not going to make a payis for that, there's still a concern that they're going to come to fight. So therefore, according to other Rishonim, there was a payis, but they didn't divide necessarily the avodas with all these kainim. You can do it all by yourself. The Mishnah concludes, have shaitan v'nituchan, flaying the animal and cutting up the pieces, shel elu ve'elu, whether it's a carbon sibur, whether it's a carbon yachid, Shavin, they're the same. Same in what sense? That they all are kosher with a zar. You don't need a kayin for that. As the Gemara will now focus on this. Taneh, Zakta Gemara, we learned in the Braise, have shaitan v'nituchan, flaying the animal and cutting up the pieces. Shavin, this is always the same by all karbanis, bizar. It can be done by a zar. You don't need a kayin for this. And the next whole piece of Gemara here will focus on trying to figure out from where do we learn this? From where do we know that this part does not have to be done by a kayin? So Chizkiya said, from where do I know that flaying the animal and cutting the pieces could be done by a non-kayin? Shenema, because the pasuk says, that the kayinim, they are the ones that have to place the fire on the mizbeach. This we learn out. Nesina says, placing the fire on the mizbeach, that requires kayinim. Hefshit v'nituach. Loi by kahuna. But the hefshit and the nituach does not require a kayin. That's the drasha that Chizkiya said. But the Gemara asks, how could you say this kind of a drasha? Hi mi boyele legufe. That pasuk is coming to teach me that the halacha itself that the kayin placed the fire of the mizbeach. It's not an extra pasuk that's coming to teach you to exclude anything else. So how do we know to come to exclude that the hefshet and the nituach a kayin does not have to do? So Rav Shimi Barashi answered, Ashkachte la Abaye, I encountered Abaye davamaz b'lei lebrei. He was explaining this drasha of Chizkiya to his son, and he explained them as follows. It says earlier in the pasuk, v'shachat, that you shech the carbon, and from there, as the Gemara is going to explain now, you learn that shchita bizar ksheira. The shchita does not have to be done by a kain. Anybody could do the shchita. Now the Braisa explains, from where do you come to this conclusion that the shchita could be done by a zar? Why would I think otherwise? So it explains, Miklal shenemar, because there's the pasuk that it says, Va'ata uvanecha itach tishmures kunaschem, and the Bach here adds, L'chol dvara mizbeach, that you, your sons, the kayanim, should guard the kohuna. Everything done in the mizbeach should be done only by the kayanim. So shemani afil shchita. I would think that for everything on the mizbeach, that includes even shchita, that it should be done only by a kayan. Talmud Loimar, therefore the pasuk says, V'shachat as ben abakar l'fnei Hashem, V'yikrivu b'nei arna kayanim esadam. So what do I see from this? That regarding the shchita does not say kayanim. Only afterwards it says v'yikrivu. That's only from the v'yikrivu. It says b'nei arna kayanim esadam. So from this understand mikabala ve'eleich mitzvahs kohona. Starting from receiving the blood and from there forward, all the avedas that follow that have to be done by b'nei arna kayanim. But before that, the shchita does not. When it says v'shachat es ben abakar, who shechts it? It doesn't say who shechts it. So therefore, what do I learn out? V'samach yadai v'shachat. Right before that, it says that you place your hands, you lean your hands on the animal, and then v'shachat. Who's leaning his hands on the animal? Not the kayin, the Yisrael, the person that's bringing the carbon. So therefore, limit ala shchita shegsheira bezar. From this, I learn out that the shchita could be done even by a zar, but from Kabbalah going forward, it's all done. All Avedas after that are done by a Kayan. So this is the basis of the entire rest of the Gemara here, that I already have a clear pasuk telling me that from Kabbalah going forward, everything should have to be done by the Kayanim. So if there's any additional pasuk that we're going to find regarding any Aveda that's telling us that it has to be done by a Kayan, it's extra. Because this pasuk already teaches me that from Kabbalah forward, it has to be done by a Kayan. So therefore now, Abaye explained to his son, Mechdi, so let's see, Mekabbalah ve'elech mitzvahs kohuna. From the Kabbalah of the blood going forward, we know that that's only for the Kayanim. If so, v'nosnu b'nei Aaron, and the Bach here adds, HaKayin, Eish, the pasuk that we quoted before, that the Kayanim have to place the fire on the Mizbeach, Lamali. Why do I need this pasuk to say that they do it? We know that from Kabbalah, everything is by the Kayanim. So therefore it's an extra pasuk. So that's why Chizkiya darshan, L'mu'utei hefshit v'nituach, that it comes to tell us that we're excluding something. What are we excluding? Hefshet v'nituach, flaying the animal and cutting the pieces, that does not have to be done by a kain. So that's why it's an extra pasuk. But the Gemara asks, no, it still seems to not be extra. Bakati, itzterech, I still need this pasuk, it's not extra, because you know why the pasuk has to tell me here that the kayin does it, even though we know that from Kabbalah going forward, everything is done by the kayin. Kivin, the lav aveda de ma'akva kaparahi. This is not a part of the aveda of the carbon that the kapara relies on this. We know the kapara needs the zrika of the dam on the mizbeach, but not the placing the fire on the mizbeach. The kapara does not rely on this. So therefore, loyte by kohona. I would think that this is not something that requires a kayin. Kamash malon the by kohona. I still need the pasuk for this itself to teach me that it requires a kayin. So there is no extra pasuk here to exclude the hefshet and the nituach. So the Gemara brings a new pasuk. The Gemara basically goes away from this pasuk that Chizkiya brought, and it brings another pasuk that seems to be extra. All based on the same point, that we know that from Kabbalah going forward, it's only the Kayanim. So therefore, this pasuk here will be extra. The following pasuk. It says, "Va'orchu b'nei Aaron ha'Kayanim esan esachim esaroish v'sapader." That the children, the Kayanim, they are the ones that will bring all the parts and the head and the fats on the mizbeach. So the question is, why does the Torah have to say this? Mechti, let's see, mekabala ve'elech mitzvahs kohona. As we said, from the Kabbalah of the blood going forward, it's only for the Kainim. So va'archu lamali, this pasuk saying that the Kainim bring the parts onto the Mizbeach, why does it have to say? So the answer is, so this is an extra pasuk, l'mu'uti hefshet v'nituach. So it's an extra pasuk, so it comes to exclude that hefshet and nituach is not done by the Kainim. So this the Gemara Taka agrees, it's an extra pasuk. However, now the Gemara is going to ask, we know that it's extra and it comes to exclude something, but what exactly does it come to exclude? How do you know it comes to exclude the flaying and the cutting of the pieces of the animal? Maybe it comes to exclude something else. Maybe I would tell you, maybe it's coming to exclude that the 2 logs of wood that have to be placed on the Mizbeach, that does not have to be done by a Kayin. So the Gemara explains, no, we stick to the context of the pasuk. Stavre, it's logical to say, divche de chavasei memayit. Since the pasuk is talking about the parts of the animal itself, that you're placing them on the Mizbeach, so the exclusion is also in the same point. The exclusion is also regarding the animal itself, regarding cutting the animal, flaying the animal. So therefore we're memayit, the hefshet v'nituach. But the Gemara says, no, if that's your point, you want to stick to the theme of the pasuk, adarabah. On the contrary, sidur de chvasei memayit. Maybe use the context of the pasuk, just like it's speaking about placing the parts and organizing the parts of the animal on the Mizbeach. Maybe it's coming to exclude the 2 logs of wood that you also organize and place on the Mizbeach. So how do you know to be memayit hefshet v'nituach? Maybe we're coming to say that the logs don't have to be placed by a kain. So the Gemara now is going to bring a source that no, the logs placed on the Mizbeach for sure must be done by a Kayin. That can't be what we're excluding. Why not? Because the master has said that we have a pasuk that tells us that the logs are brought dafke by a Kayin. The Kayin brings everything to the Mizbeach. Zu haylachas evarim lekevesh. This refers to the fact that the Kainim are the ones that bring the parts of the Mizbeach to the ramp. Okay, so now this as well is an extra pasuk, because if everything from Kabbalah Saddam going forward is done by the Kain, it doesn't have to say that he brings all these parts to the ramp. So what do we learn out from here? We learn out again an exclusion. That haylachas evarim lekevesh udebai kohona, bringing the parts to the ramp, that requires a Kain. Halachas eitzim loy boy kohona, bringing the wood to the Mizbeach, that does not require a kain. That's what we exclude from this. But now, what do I understand from this? Ha sidur shnei gizrei eitzim boy kohona. So from this I understand that once you place the logs of the wood on the Mizbeach itself, that does require a kain. So as Taisus over here explains, if I would say that placing the logs on the Mizbeach does not require a kain, it would be obvious that bringing the wood to Mizbeach doesn't require a kain. If even placing it on the Mizbeach itself doesn't require a kain, for sure bringing it to the Mizbeach doesn't require a kain. From the fact that we need a special drasha to say that bringing the wood to the Mizbeach doesn't require a kain, I understand that placing the woods on the Mizbeach itself does, that does require a kain. So therefore we go back to the drasha from the pasuk va'archu b'nei Aaron. What was the Gemara's question? We know that pasuk is coming to exclude something, but how do you know it's coming to exclude hefshet v'nituach? Maybe it's coming to exclude placing the logs of wood on the Mizbeach, but now we said no, the logs on the Mizbeach, for sure the kain has to be done. So therefore va'archu, this pasuk we quoted before, va'archu lama li, what is it coming to exclude? L'mu'utei hefshet v'nituach. It comes to exclude the hefshet v'nituach, the flaying and the cutting of the pieces of the animal, that's not done by a kayin. So this is a second source that the Gemara brings now. But now the Gemara is going to ask on this source as well. Frag the Gemara, the Gra here is not Geiris this, but other Rishonim are Geiris it. We'll learn with the Girse that is Geiris it and with the Marsha's Pshat here. So the Ve'eme, frag the Gemara, even this pasuk that you just brought now, Va'orchu b'nei Aaron ha'kainim v'sanesachim. Hachanami here as well, I can say, legufe, it's not an extra pasuk, it's needed to teach me the halacha of this pasuk itself and not to exclude anything. What exactly does the Gemara mean by this? Didn't we explain that it's not needed legufe? Because we already know that from Kabbalah going forward, it's all done by the Kainim. So the Marsha explains that it's connected to the continuation of the Gemara. We'll see in a moment, the Gemara is going to explain that there is a drasha that this pasuk, va'orchu b'nei Aaron ha'kainim, is needed for itself, not for anything else. We'll see in a moment. But the Gemara says you can't use this pasuk to exclude anything. So Ella, the Gemara brings a third pasuk where it says that a kayin is required and it's extra. Because we know from Kabbalah's Hadam and forward is all the kainim. What's that third pasuk? Ela v'hiktir hakayin es hakayil. There's another pasuk, and it's all in the same parsha there. It says v'hiktir, that the kayin is the one that burns everything on the mizbeach. Lama yasa, this is also an extra pasuk, and this is the pasuk that I say l'mu'ute havshet v'nituach. It's only written to exclude that the havshet and the nituach does not have to be done through the kayin. And now the Gemara sort of concludes and goes back to all the psukim that we brought until here and explains what we learn out from each one of them. When it said in the pasuk that the kain brings everything to the kevesh of the mizbeach, as we said before, this refers to bringing all the parts of the animal to the ramp, and the only reason that's written is what you bring, the limbs, the parts that are brought to the ram, they require a kain. Bringing the wood to the mizbeach does not require a kain. But hasidish shnegis reitzim, actually placing the logs of the wood on the mizbeach itself, bayikona, that does require a kain. V'nasnu, then the pasuk that we brought before, v'nasnu, which is the first pasuk that this whole Gemara began with, v'nasnu b'nei aaron hakayin eshal mizbeach. What's that pasuk coming to teach me? That pasuk I need legufe. That's not extra at all. That's a pasuk coming to say for itself. Why do I need it for itself? That I need kayin? Because as the Gemara said before, because it's not part of the kapara. I would have thought that you don't need kainim for that. So that's not an extra pasuk b'chlal. Then va'archu, this pasuk that we brought, va'archu, what is that coming to teach me? See here, the Gemara will explain the point that it asked before, that this is also not an extra pasuk, it's needed for itself. Why is it not an extra pasuk? Because this is the source where I know that you need 6 kainim to bring the carbon tamid to the mizbeach. How do I know 6? Va'archu is shnayim. Va'archu is a plural term, so it's 2 kainim. B'nei Aaron, again 2 shnayim. And hakayanim, again plural term, shnayim, another 2. From this is the source, lamadnu litle shaton shisha. Therefore the lamb that's brought for the carbon tamid needs 6 kayanim to bring it to the ramp of the mizbeach. And according to the Marsha, when the Gemara before said va'archu ve'ema hachanami legufe, when the Gemara asked that question before, it's referring to this drasha right now, that this pasuk is coming to tell me how many kayanim I need. So here the Gemara, this is a conclusion of explaining all the psukim. Sagt the Gemara, Rav Amnune said, Kashile le Rabbi Lazar. Hi, beven habakar ksiv. This pasuk that we just dashed here, that you're saying that this is the source for how many kayim are needed for the lamb that's brought for a carbon oila, how could you say it's talking about a lamb? Look in the pasuk there, it's talking about cattle, it's talking about a par, about a cow, not about a lamb. And for a cow, what did we say in the Mishnah? You need 24 kayim. Uben habak esrim varba. Boy, it needs 24. And so v'nichale, and he answered and he said, even though the context of the pasuk is talking about a cow, but nevertheless there's a drasha that we say that it's referring to a lamb, because it says in the pasuk, ala eitzim, you put this carbon on the wood of the mizbeach, asha ala eish, which is on the fire, asha ala mizbeach, which is on the mizbeach. Ezehu dava shenema by eitzim eish mizbeach. Which carbon do you have to bring new wood, a new fire onto the mizbeach? Havay mizet tle. This is only the lamb by the carbon tamid shel shachar. For the rest of the karbanis that are brought during the day, you don't have to bring new wood. You don't have to bring a new fire. That was already brought in the beginning of the day. The only carbon that you have to bring a new fire, a new wood, is the carbon tamid. So therefore we darshan that even though in the pasuk it says ben abakar, but it's referring to the carbon tamid in the morning, which was brought from a tleh, and the 6 kayanim have to bring it onto the mizbeach. Amar Avasi, Amar Rab Yochanan, Zor, Shesideris, a maracha, a non-kayan that comes and sets up the maracha, the place where the fire is made for the mizbeach, chayiv, he's going to be chayiv misa bidei shemayim for doing an aveda that belongs to the kayan. What would the Zor do if he did this? And he wants to take it apart, and the kayan should do it. Perka, the Zor takes it apart, and he sets it up again. So the Gemara immediately asks, what do you mean? Who, the Zor sets it up again? Maya Hanile. What has he accomplished if he takes it apart and then he puts it back together? Ella, what he meant to say is, Perka, if the Zor set up the wood and he wasn't supposed to, he takes it apart, Perka Zor, the Zor takes it apart, V'saydra Kayin. And the kayin is the one that will set it up again. So the chiddush over here is that you may have thought that once the Zor did something he wasn't supposed to, so just get out of the area. We don't need you to take it apart. Just go away from the mizbeach. So we say no. The Zor himself is the one that takes it apart, and then the kayin comes and sets it up again. Maskefla Rab Zera, now Rab Zera asked on this halacha of Rabbi Yochanan that the Zar is going to be chayiv misa for doing this. V'chiyesh l'cha aveda sheksheira balayla. Is there any aveda that could be done at night? Upsula bizar, and it will be possible for a Zar to do it and it will be chayiv misa b'dei shemayim? This is an aveda. Setting up the wood on the mizbeach could be done at night. So it's not a regular aveda that has to be done by day. Fragt the Gemara on Rab Zera's question, V'loi, do I not find other avedas that could only be done by a kain, even though it's an aveda from the nighttime? V'harei evarim u'pedarim, the parts and of the animal and the fats of the animal that are burnt at nighttime, and it could only be done by a kain. So I see that even an aveda of the nighttime is only by a kain. Answers the Gemara, no, this is considered to be saif aveda diyamamihi. This is the conclusion of the aveda during the day. It's not considered to be a nighttime aveda. This is the Gemara said this already in the beginning of the Perek. It's a continuation of that aveda. So therefore, Rab Zera's question stands. I don't find any aveda of nighttime that must be done by a kain. Fragt the Gemara, but v'harei truma sadeshin. How about taking off the ashes? That's done before alois hashachar. That's also done during the nighttime, and it has to be done through a kain. Answers the Gemara, tchilas aveda diyamamihi. That's considered to be the beginning of the aveda of the day. Davar Avasiyam Rabbi Yochanan, Kiddush Yadav, the Truma Sadeshan, if the Kain came into the Beis HaMikdash and it's still night, and he washed his hands in order to take off the ashes of the Mizbeach, L'machar, tomorrow, which means after Alois HaShachar, and it's Tzarech L'Kadosh, he doesn't have to wash his hands again, Shekvar Kiddush Mitchilas Aveda, because he already washed his hands from the beginning of Aveda. So we see it's considered to be Tchilas Aveda of that day. So therefore, Rab Zera's question stands. We don't find any Aveda that's considered to be a total nighttime Aveda, and it's not the conclusion of the daytime or a beginning of the daytime Aveda that must be done by a Kayin. So Ve'ala Kashya. So Rab Zera's question stands. How could Rabbi Yochanan say that if a Zar sets up the Eitzim on the Mizbeach, could be done at night, that he would be Chayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim? Ella, so the Gemara therefore changes what Rabbi Yochanan said. Ki itmer, when we learned the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, hachi itmer. This is the way it was said. Omer Rav Asi, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, zar shesideh shnei gizrei eitzim. A zar that set up the two logs of wood that were brought in the Mizbeach, chayiv. Then it'll be chayiv misa. Why? Hoyel v'avedas yaimi. This is an aveda that has to be done during the day. Maskefla Rav, so Rav asks a question on this. If the shnei gizrei eitzim have to be done during the day through a kayin, and therefore Zar would be chayiv misa, elameyata. So if so, the question is tibai pious. So why isn't this one of the things that you need a lottery done for this for the kainim to get the schus to do this? This is a regular aveda of the daytime. So the Gemara says, Ishtamite, when Rava asked this question, why wouldn't you make a lottery for this? He forgot, Hadetanya, this that it says in the Braisa, and we had it before, that this was actually part of the lottery. Mi shezacha, betruma sadeshen, the one that was zeiche, the geidel, to take off the ashes, Yizke b'sidid maracha, he's also going to be zeiche in organizing the wood on the Mizbeach, and also ubesido shnei gizri eitzim, and also putting the two logs of wood on the Mizbeach. So therefore, this is part of the pious. Fragt the Gemara, so lemeimre, should that mean the avedas yaim boy pious, that only an aveda done during the day, that's a kind of aveda that's included in the lotteries. But avedas laila loy boy pious, but anything done at nighttime does not require a lottery. But is this true? The Gemara brings back the same question basically that we asked before. The parts of the karbanis that are burnt on the Mizbeach, they are done at nighttime. And there was a geidel that was made for that as well. So the Gemara answers, as we said before, that's not called a nighttime Aveda. Seif Aveda the Yoma. That's considered to be the conclusion of the Aveda of the day, and therefore it's part of the lottery. Fragt the Gemara v'arei Truma Sadeshin. Again, the same question as before. The Truma Sadeshin was done before Alois HaShachar. Why is there a lottery made for that? The answer is, and here the Gemara could have given the same answer as it said before, that it's really considered to be the beginning of the Aveda of the day, but the Gemara gives a different answer. Mishom Ma'isa Shahaya. This goes back to the beginning of this Perek, that they made a lottery for this because of the story that happened. What was the story that happened at the beginning of the Perek? The Kainim were racing up the ramp, and they hurt each other, and even worse than that, and therefore they decided to make a lottery for this, so this shouldn't happen again. So therefore, even if you're going to say that it was an Aveda of the night, they decided to make a lottery for this. So now the Gemara has another question on what Rabbi Yechanan said, Lememre, should I say, based on what he said before, da Aveidas Yaim, v'shezar chayev aleh misa, only an Aveidah, that's a daytime Aveidah, and only a kind of Aveidah that if a Zar does it, you would be chayev misa for this, boy pious, that requires a geidel, but ein Zar chayev aleh misa, if it's not a significant enough Aveidah that only the Kohen could do it, and if a Zar does it, he would be chayiv misa. Loi boy pious. It would not require any lottery. Is that the case? But v'harei shchita. What's with shchita? Shchita is one of the things that they made a geidel for, and shchita could be done by a Zar. Doesn't have to be done by a kohen. So why was that part of the lottery? And says the Gemara, you're right, shchita is an exception. Shani shchita, the tchilas aveidahi. Shchita is different because it's the beginning of the aveidah, so therefore they would make a lottery for that. Who's going to get the schus to start? The very fact that it's the start of the aveidah, that's significant enough that they made a lottery for that. But otherwise, they only made a geidel for something which is an aveidah of the daytime, and an aveidah that a kohen must do, and a zar is chayiv misa if he does it. That's significant enough that they made a raffle. Ama mazutre v'teimer avashi. But v'hanan loit nanochi. I have a question on what you just said, because we learned differently. What did it say? This is a Mishnah in Talmud where it says there, Amalem Amamuna, the one in charge of the Aved in the Beis HaMikdash would say, when it came early in the morning, he would say, Tz'u v're'u, go out to the rooftop and go and see imigia zman hashchita. Is it aleis hashachar already? Has the time of the shchita arrived? That's what it says regarding shchita. V'ilu zman shnei gizrei eitzim loikatani. However, it doesn't say go out and see if it's alois hashachar, if you could already put the logs of wood on the mizbeach. It doesn't say that. So it seems like that the logs of the wood could be placed on the mizbeach even before alois hashachar. So why are we saying that it must be done once it's already daytime? That was the conclusion of the Gemara before, that the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim has to be done during the day. But over here it's mashma in that Mishnah that the Shechita has to be done after alois hashachar. But he doesn't say anything about the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. And it says the Gemara, no, there's no raya from that Mishnah. Why not? Hach de lesla takante katani. Shchita, if it's done before alois hashachar, it can't be redone. The shchita is done already. So therefore he would say, make sure it's actually alois hashachar, so you're not doing the shchita too early. Hach de isla takante, however, placing the logs of wood in the mizbeach, so that could be fixed. Like a tani, so therefore that's not mentioned. If you by mistake placed the logs of wood before it was alois hashachar, so what are you going to do? Take it off and put it back on again. So therefore it doesn't mention that in the Mishnah. But really it does have to be done dafka during the day.